The amount of pressure on an NFL general manager is absurd. Having to make moves with no guarantee that you will get to see out your plan is a tough environment to work in. Fix the problems now, or be looking for a job later. That being said, some NFL GMs really sucked at their jobs and caused such irreparable damage their names are now uttered with disdain and contempt typically only reserved for politicians. Let's all have a good laugh at these losers because surely none of us would have drafted Johnny Manziel. The worst GMs in the history of the NFL is coming up right after this. The regular season is coming to a close, and chances are your team is out of it. No worries, make those playoff games count with Prize Picks. Use my code 5points and all first-time users on Prize Picks will receive an instant deposit match up to $100. If you deposit $69, Prize Picks will give you $69. Nice. What you do is pick 2 to 6 players and then decide if they will get more or less of their Prize Pick projection, and you can win, get this, 25 times your money on any entry. This week, I have QBs with something to play for. CJ Stroud over, Jordan Love over, and Josh Allen finally over. Prize Picks is always running new promotions like Taco Tuesday, Demons and Goblins, and Flex Fridays, and more. Your money is safe and can be easily withdrawn, and don't forget, these are the eligible states. So after this video, first-time users go to prizepicks.com or download the app from the link below and use my code 5points for a 100% deposit match up to $100. Again, that's promo code 5points on Prize Picks. Ryan Pace, Chicago Bears. Bears fans and most everyone else will remember Ryan Pace as the guy who traded up for Mitch Trubisky, but he should also be remembered for a slew of other shitty moves too. Of course, I can remind you that Pace passed on both Groper Cleveland and Patrick Mahomes in that draft, but Pace also gave up the 3rd, 67th, and 111 picks in the 2017 draft, and a 3rd the next year to the Niners for kissin' titties, in one of the most unnecessary and lopsided trades of all time. Pace looked like a semi-genius right up until the double doink, and then things started to fall apart. Yes, he did hit on the Khalil Mack trade in 2018, but throughout his 7-year tenure as the Bears GM, he was clearly a horrible evaluator of talent at the game's most important position. Pace released Jay Cutler to make room for Mike Glennon. He carted out Chase Daniel, Nick Foles, and a washed-up Andy Dalton. Then, history repeated itself when he traded up for Justin Fields in 2021, though the jury is still out on that one. Pace was also weak when it came to free agents. Doing things like giving Jimmy Graham money generally looks bad. But perhaps his biggest failure was not addressing the O-line until it was entirely too late. In 6 drafts prior to 2021, he only drafted 1 tackle. Unfortunately, Tevin Jenkins has been hurt often, and he overspent in the middle on free agents like Charles Leno and Bobby Massey to get mixed results. Most Bears fans will tell you it wouldn't have mattered if Pace drafted Watson or Mahomes. The Bears were gonna ruin either of them in the same horrific way. Just look at Justin Fields right now. Pace, who was the youngest GM in NFL history at the time he was hired, was fired in 2022, and despite 2 trips to the playoffs, the team was 48-65 under his tenure. Gene Smith, Jacksonville Jaguars. Some of the GMs on this list will have flashes of success. For Gene Smith, he had absolutely none. Not exactly a household name, Smith was an OG member of the Jaguars since their inception in 1997, working his way up the ladder when he was hired as GM in 2009 and was at the helm for 4 years. 4 incredibly terrible years. Smith started his tenure off by firing the beloved and respected Jack Del Rio and replacing him with Mike Mularkey, a coach whom my late friend and ex-Jaguar Uche Nwaneri referred to as a fucking asshole and an idiot. Smith traded up to draft Blaine Gabbert and inserted him into the starting role before he even knew the playbook. He poorly drafted Eben Britton, Tyson Alawahu, and overpaid for free agents Torrey Holt. Yes, Jags legend Torrey Holt, as well as Aaron Campman, DeJuan Landry, and Aaron Ross, who openly remarked he was given a $14 million paid vacation. In his time in Duval, no player Smith drafted nor acquired made a Pro Bowl, and even his rare hit like Justin Blackmon was run out of the league after a couple seasons due to personal and legal issues. After being fired in 2009, Smith finished his 4-year tenure with a 22-42 record and left the Jags gutted and in disarray. Bill OBrien, Houston Texans. Bill O'Brien, the coach, not so bad. He's actually technically the most successful Bill Belichick disciple, a record of 52-48 and multiple playoff appearances. But Bill O'Brien, the GM, is what got his ass fired. Let's start with his horrific trade, specifically taking DeAndre Hopkins to the swap meet like he was an old smelly couch and not even getting a first rounder for him. He gave up a second rounder for Brandon Cooks. He gave up former 1-1 Jadeveon Clowney for almost nothing. He also seemed to love doing what nobody else does, acquiring veteran running backs like Duke and David Johnson. So he didn't sign Brock Osweiler, but boy did he want him to start. And then in 2017, he started Tom Savage over Deshaun Watson to start the season. Whatever success O'Brien had as a coach will forever be overshadowed by that Hopkins trade. In fact, that's all most people even remember of him besides that stupid ass fake punt. Now, for this one, George Kokinis, Tom Heckert, Michael Lombardi, Ray Farmer, and Sashi Brown. The Cleveland Browns from 2009 to 2018 had one of, if not the worst stretches in the history of the NFL, which was capped off with an 0-16 season in 2017. And the 5 inept GMs that ran the team during that time period need to all be called out, because going 34-110 over a 9-year span really was a team effort. Let's start with George Kokinis. Or is it Kokina? I don't fucking know. Who cares? Who did draft Alex Mack, but was fired after just 9 months for allegedly substance abuse and not being able to keep his cockiness in his pants. That led to Tom Heckert, who passed on JJ Watt and Julio Jones in the loaded 2011 draft, and then traded down to select defensive end Phil Taylor. Taylor had 7 sacks in 44 games, 4 of which came in his first year. Heckert was then fired and gave way to 1-year GM Michael Lombardi, who's known more for being a hot take spewing analyst and Jason Kelsey calling him a clown,
some clown named Mike Lombardi,
than anything he did as the Browns GM. He was fired after a power struggle. He allegedly had selected Josh McDaniels as the next head coach of the Browns, but even the Browns knew that was stupid, and McDaniels publicly backed out because even a snake like McDaniels recognized Cleveland was a shit show. Lombardi gave way to idiot du jour Ray Farmer, who famously drafted Johnny Manziel. This is who the Haslams, who bought the team in 2014, first handpicked to ruin their franchise, and boy, did he do just that. He also drafted Justin Gilbert and hired inept head coach Mike Pettin. After Jimmy Haslam couldn't stand that Farmer made it 2 whole years, he then brought in Sashi Brown, whose moves took a 3-13 team and made them a 1-win team, and then a no-win team. Brown got rid of wide receiver Taylor Gabriel, who was productive with the Falcons. He then traded linebacker Demario Davis for Calvin Pryor, who they cut. He cut Joe Hayden, who went on to the Steelers. He traded for Brock Osweiler and then cut him in camp. He let Alex Mack just walk and then passed on drafting Carson Wentz and Deshaun Watson, who is now Andrew Berry's albatross. Ultimately, Jim Haslam needs to take some blame for the bed he continues to shit, but these GMs were outright terrible. And finally, the worst GM of all time, Matt Millen, Detroit Lions. Admit it, you came here just to say this. Look, Matt Millen was a great NFL player, a great analyst, and is likely a fantastic person. A good GM, he was not. Now, before I roast his tenure, I will give him credit for drafting Calvin Johnson after famously whiffing on a slew of wideouts. It took balls to make that move, though I mean, it would suck even more if Millen was the guy who passed on Calvin Johnson. Other than that, Matt Millen was very bad at drafting. He drafted mediocre Jeff Backus and then extended his mediocrity. He drafted Joey Harrington, who openly complained the offense was too complicated. Charles Rogers and Mike Williams were all-time busts at wide receiver. His free agent signings like Dre Bly and a washed-up Damian Woody were bad, and he brought in terrible coaches like Mike Martz and Marty Morningweg, who he hired probably only because they had matching alliterative names. Marshall Mathers would have been better than Morningweg, who once deferred possession in sudden death overtime. Millen's era concluded with an 0-16 season, and prior to that, the fans in Detroit conducted the Millen Man March, and he was finally relieved of his job in 2009. Now, Detroit fan, Please go easy on him. That 0-16 season led to Matt Stafford and the eventual 15-year turnaround process. Millen at times has admitted he wasn't really qualified for the job and is at peace with all of his bad decisions. He's fighting various ailments, and I hope he feels better, but thankfully, he's not fighting the NFL draft anymore. So, who did I miss? Leave a comment down below, and yes, Dave Gettleman, I get it, fuck Dave Gettleman.